Paula, 2017, 60 years of AEA. Where has the time gone?
Seriously, time flies when there's exciting things always happening in the avionics industry. And the last 60 years have flown by with new technologies and new faces, new ideas.
Where did AEA come from? Because for you, it's been a family business.
Well, it didn't start out that way, though. It started actually in Denver, Colorado, 60 years ago. There was an avionics shop owner at an airport outside of Denver that decided the repair stations, or avionics shops, needed a more unified voice. So he and his wife sat at their kitchen table and they handwrote 100 postcards to shops across the United States. And he said, if you're interested in learning more about putting together some sort of a trade association to represent repair stations, please attend the meeting. So from those 100 postcards, there were 11 avionics shop owners attended that first meeting, and the Aircraft Electronics Association was born. Now that gentleman's name was Charles Chuck Peacock, and he's kind of an industry legend within the AEA. But for several years, as they grew the association, it was all volunteer efforts. There was no paid staff. It was just a group of dedicated men at the time, and I believe there was maybe one woman working to help grow AEA. But over the years, they started having more annual meetings, and then they started having 2 or 3 meetings a year to get together, and it slowly started advancing and more people wanted to join. After a while, when the manufacturers caught wind of this organization, they started saying, well, do you mind if we just set up a small display during your meetings? We could show some new products. And so what originally started out as just an avionics shop only organization soon started to grow, and they started allowing associate members or the manufacturers and distributors to join. And over the years, they started to grow and realized we're at the point where we need a paid staff. And that's where my father came in. Monty Mitchell was hired as their first executive director back in 1977, so 20 years after the association started. And he was executive director, which later became president of the association for nearly 20 years before his retirement. And I started to work for him right out of college on our monthly magazine, Aero-News. My background's journalism and public relations, and I was looking for a magazine or newspaper to go to work for, and ended up in the world of aviation. Never thought I would do it, but so throughout the years, just fell in love with this industry and the people and the members within it, and worked my way up through the organization, became president 20 years ago.
Carries us back to 2017. Let's get the big question out of the way first. The highs and lows entering 2017. Where is AEA right now? What do you consider to be its greatest achievements over 16? And more important, what are your greatest concerns?
I don't know if I would call it an achievement as much as just sincere efforts to educate the flying community about the need to get equipped for the ADS-B 2020 mandate. Time is running out, and we look at, everyone keeps talking about 2020 being the mandate, when in all actuality, it's December 31st of 2019. So we have a little over 3 years to meet this mandate. There's still 100,000 aircraft that have not yet equipped in the general aviation industry. And of course, since my organization represents the avionics manufacturers who are producing the ADS-B equipment, as well as the repair stations who are tasked with doing the installs, it is definitely a priority on our to-do list for the organization to help our repair station avionics shops be ready to tackle the demand for all these installs that are sure to come their way. And I will say that right now they are ready, willing, and able. They have the proper test equipment, they have the staff, the technicians trained and ready to do the installations, and now we're just waiting for the customers. Although I am happy to report, since really the beginning of 2017, just for the first quarter, we have seen more interest and more installs being done. Our shops are reporting they're now, a lot of them are 2 to 3 months backlogged with installations. So they're encouraging their customers to get an install slot marked for the rest of this year and into 18, because 19 is going, it's supply and demand. 19 is going to be busy. So that's one of our issues. We're concerned about, obviously, with the new presidency comes new leadership, both in the House and the Senate side. We've had some interesting meetings so far that have been, I think, very beneficial, but AEA has expressed their concern about the possibility of privatizing ATC in the U.S. We're just concerned that general aviation may lose their voice if the organization that has been proposed in Congressman Schuster's bill comes to fruition again, if that same type of language is used in a new FAA reauthorization bill. We just want to make sure if that happens, that general aviation is heard equally in this organization's board of directors. We strongly believe that general aviation pays their fair share to use the same airspace that commercial airlines do.
A little bit less than a year ago, the Experimental Aircraft Association and Dynon put together a real surprise, an effort that was ultimately successful to allow, through the FAA, the use of non-certified avionics in certified airplanes. How do you see this affecting your membership right now and in the future? Was this a good thing or a bad thing?
I wouldn't say it was a bad thing at all. I think it was a misunderstanding by those manufacturers or those industry professionals that thought maybe it was tools of the devil. Once they understood the process that EAA went through to obtain this STC, they didn't use anything that wasn't already in the regulations. There was an issue with the commercial parts used within that Dynon system. But once that was discussed with the FAA and industry, and to make sure that that portion of that STC was not overlooked in the future, we embrace that technology and that pathway to certification. I think it is the wave of the future. I think since then we've seen other manufacturers come out using the same type of guidelines, the same regulations that EAA used on that STC to introduce some of their own products. And I know of more products coming out in the next few months that are going to be using that exact same protocol or pedigree, if you will, to introduce those products. So no, we embrace anything that will streamline and bring more safety enhancing products into the cockpit. We are all for. All we ask is that the FAA play fair, and if it's applicable to one manufacturer, that pedigree and that process, it should be applicable to all manufacturers seeking that same type of approval.
The question ultimately is, does this loosen up everything across the board? Are you seeing changes in attitude based on this that will ultimately really enhance the AEA membership's ability to do business?
Industry's been asking for this for years. We have been, suggesting and trying to sit down with the FAA and make them realize there is an easier pathway, and let industry, again, do what they do best and engineer the product and bring it to market in a quicker, more efficient way. So I think at the same time that EAA unveiled this STC for the Dynon product, industry was already working on this, just in a little bit different way. I think this did speed up the process, and with EAA's announcement last year about this time, it has definitely helped speed up the process. With that said, I think the FAA was also at the same time, it was almost a perfect storm because the FAA was listening to industry. We were able to sit down at the same table, roll up our sleeves, and talk about streamlining efforts together. And EAA, I applaud them for really bringing it to the forefront with this Dynon product. All in all, we're maturing in the industry. We're maturing with our certification standards and implementing easier pathways to bring products to the market.
I have to admit being a little shocked of looking over your yearly report that there wasn't more activity in regards to avionics. Why were the numbers, it wasn't huge, but why were they so disappointing when, in fact, we should all be just building and installing our little brains out?
Absolutely. We're always disappointed when the numbers are down. But I have to remind you, the way we collect this data, and it can be sensitive for a manufacturer to release their sales data to us, but they do. We have 20 manufacturers that have stepped up to the plate and said, we realize this is a valuable number that industry and Wall Street and venture capitalists need to know, so we will participate. But in doing so, we collect the data by a third-party company. We never see any individual manufacturer's sales figures. So what we report to the industry, that one total sales figure, is all the AEA sees as well. It's very hard for us to make calculations or forward-looking statements on, why is the sales down this month or this quarter, or what we think predicting what the future quarters will bring. I will say this, for year-end 2016, avionics sales were down 6.4% over 2015. But there's a couple of interesting figures that we do see. Fourth quarter sales, both in 15 and 16, are up. They're higher than the previous 3 quarters of those respective years. So something's happening in the fourth quarter where more sales obviously are being made because the sales are up. We're also seeing more sales in the retrofit market. Every year since the inception of the market report into the end of 2013, retrofit sales are gaining a bigger share over forward fit. Now that does make sense because airframe manufacturing has not picked up at the level it used to be several years ago. So for the retrofit market, it's a plus for them because they're seeing more avionics going into retrofitted, existing cockpits. But for me to try to make a forward-looking statement, all I can say is we are hoping with ADS-B installs picking up that hopefully in 2017 for first quarter and the next 2, 3, and 4 quarters, we will see an increase in avionics sales.
Aero-TV is brought to you by Free Flight Systems is expanding its business into the Part 25 aviation industry through new avionics shop dealers, manufacturer partnerships, and STC programs. With a focus on the next-gen airspace and remote-mounted sensor systems, Free Flight Systems will continue to be a leader in the next-gen airspace. Visit freeflightsystems.com for details.
Southeast Aerospace teamed up with Garmin International, Gables Engineering, and Peregrine Avionics to bring the most cost-effective and flexible ADS-B solution to the business aviation community. Our Part 25 AML STC is available for non-TCAS 2 Beechjet, Citation, Hawker, Learjet, and Falcon Jet. Visit seaerospace.com for more details.
Have you ever wanted big glass in your cockpit but didn't have the space? Now with Avidyne's IFD series touchscreen GPS navigators and our new IFD 100 iPad app, having big glass in your cockpit is finally within reach.